Okay, everyone, it's 7:30 on Wednesday, the 19th of November. So time for the Special Cabinet Advisory Committee meeting. Welcome everyone on a cold and chilly evening. So I just wanted to say I intend to go through some housekeeping matters. This meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and recorded. The recording will be uploaded to YouTube within 2 working days, where it can be accessed by everyone. Members, please use the microphone in front of you when talking and ensure you turn your microphone off once you have finished speaking. Another member or officer will not be able to speak if your microphone is still on. Please note that the Council's visual equipment may, on some occasions, focus on or near to the public gallery area. Therefore, those in attendance at this meeting may be filmed or recorded. Attendance at this meeting signifies your agreement to this. If, as a member of the public, you do not wish to be filmed or recorded, please inform a council staff member in attendance and we will try to assist where reasonably possible. On hearing the fire alarm, we ask all attendees to immediately evacuate the building. Please evacuate via the nearest fire exits and make your way to the community square outside of the main reception doors. Thank you very much. Do we have apologies for absence, please, Karen?
We've received apologies from Councillor Alan Ridges and Councillor Tony Rana. Councillor Frank Wardle and Councillor Ectovine Tandy are attending as their substitutes. We have also received apology from Councillor Samir Jassal.
Thanks, Karen, and thank you to the substitutes for coming along. Is everyone happy with the minutes of the last meeting and happy for me to sign those? Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. Any declarations of interest in the agenda this evening? No. To consider whether any items in Part A of the agenda should be considered in private or any in Part B in public. We do have private items on the agenda this evening, but they'll be considered in private. And that moves us to agenda item 6. The RICS Q2 UK Commercial Property Monitor. Over to you, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So reviewing the UK Commercial Property Monitor, the key points from the report start off with occupier demand in the general mainstream market, such as, the industrial sector and the office market, appear to be unchanged. So as a result of that, a lot of landlords are offering a lot more incentives to tenants. On a national level, we're seeing that vacancies in all the different sectors, so retail, office, retail warehousing and industrial, are rising at a slow rate, hence landlords offering more incentives to tenants to take on lettings. Most of these vacancies are actually in the secondary market, whereas prime markets in places like London and other parts of the southeast appear to be stronger. But I think that the vacancies are mostly linked to the secondary markets. Looking into the sort of future, so let's say the next 12 months, the feedback from the experts in this report anticipate rental growth, but they have stressed that this may only be seen in like prime markets, so where you have sort of new buildings or buildings with better energy efficiency. They also mentioned that capital values for office type of buildings and industrial may see growth, but that again is linked to where they offer, better amenities and improved energy efficiency. Just going through some of the comments from some of the industry experts in the southeast. One thing that was commonly noted is that in transactions, so for lettings and for sales, there's a bit of delay because I think a lot of business owners are taking time to make decisions on, moving their businesses because it's essentially costly and it eventually affects their operational costs. So you'll find that transactions which take usually 3 months could take up to 6 months, take up to 9 months. So landlords in response to that are, offering more incentives such as rent-free periods and just adjusting, details of the transaction. One thing they also noted was that investors are looking for deals where they can add value. So there are some investors who look, primarily for income, whereas there are others who, look to add value to properties. Just back onto the point about energy efficiency, there's a trend where a lot of some of these experts are saying that the strongest demand for properties now appear to be buildings that have improved energy efficiency, because when a building's more efficient, the overall running costs for the tenants tend to be lower. So focusing on the council's portfolio, I'm just going to give you some figures against the sort of national picture to understand where we are and how we're performing. In our industrial portfolio, we currently have only one unit that's vacant, and that represents about 2% of our portfolio. But on a national level, vacancy levels in the industrial market are around 8%. On the national front, for office vacancies, so this covers prime office, secondary offices, vacancy levels are around 13.7%. However, our office investment is fully let. In the retail sector, vacancy levels on a national level are 13.6%, whereas in this report, I did note there were 3 vacancies. However, that's dropped down to 2 because we recently let a unit in the last month. And focusing on shopping centre vacancies, on a national front, that level is around 16.9%, but in our portfolio, we have about 11% of vacancies. So just focusing a little bit more on shopping centres. So as you know, we own St George's. We're still currently looking at different initiatives to, increase footfall and support the local economy. One of the things that we're doing is we've engaged with temporary occupiers in some of our vacant units to, attract the seasonal market, with Christmas coming up. We previously mentioned that we've recently acquired trading pods, and our centre management team continue to promote that to encourage smaller businesses to test the market. And although, as I mentioned before, transactions are taking a bit longer to complete, we do have some offers in the background. And in terms of the status, they're sitting with lawyers. But again, because a lot of business owners want to ensure that they're making, good decisions for themselves and their businesses, they are taking a bit longer. But generally, I could say that the Communities and the Inclusive Growth Directorate, we're working really proactively to enhance, the asset strategy and create greater returns for the council. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ting. That's really comprehensive. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Croxton.
Just a observation. In these very gloomy times, you seem to be suggesting we are more than pulling our weight and above the average position for most councils. Is that a fair reflection?
Thank you, Councillor. I would say so, because if you look at the figures, we seem to be outperforming, the national picture. So, for example, where you have office vacancies at around 13%, our office investment continues to remain let. We communicate very regularly with the tenant, and they're happy with the, with the accommodation. And I think it's a combination of just being proactive and making sure we understand, what the tenant requirements are. And again, the figures sort of, attest to where we are in the market. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the figures to me, as Councillor Croxton just mentioned, that we are holding our own, I think. We could do with doing a little bit better, but there's so much uncertainty out there at this moment in time, and what with the budget coming up next week. So it's been a year of uncertainty. So people are a little bit sceptical, I suppose, of taking the plunge right now till things level out. Hopefully, like you say, within the next year, things might look better for us. And I think it's just that little bit of uncertainty is why we are sort of holding our head above water, as we see. But like I say, could do a little bit better. But I think that may be some or most of the cause of that. Thank you.
I'll come in first because of the political points and then hand over to Tina. I think we've had uncertainty for a number of years, sadly. It's been very difficult, and obviously there's still challenging times trying to get everything sorted. But I think seeing 2% vacancies in industrial units with 1 unit vacant compared with nationally 8%, and it's a challenging market in the retail spaces, particularly in St George's, but again, that's outperforming the sector in terms of where it's at, and we're still producing a 7% yield on the original investment, which is the important thing. And that yield comes back and produces revenue that we can use for things like Christmas lights and that sort of thing, which some councils have cut back on. So it's really, this particular portfolio is important because it helps pay for more than just the basic services in terms of what's offered to residents. But I'll answer to Tina, to pass over to Tina if she's got any other comment. Any other questions, follow-ups? Any questions on that part of the report? No, I mean, I'd just like to thank officers and Tina and the whole team for the work that's going in, because it takes a lot of effort to get it to the point where we're outperforming the sector, and I think it's to be applauded. I mean, obviously, as you've said, Councillor Pearson, we'd like to see that 11% of units let in the St George's and the other one gone, but the fact that we're outperforming where we are, and that's the purpose of bringing this report to the committee, because I think it provides context for the Part B item when we look at our own portfolio. Yep, comment.
Can I just come back on that, Chair? It wasn't a criticism that I was giving. It was just the basic look of what is out there. No way I did that. I mean, it is criticising what's been going on. There's a lot of work been going on. I understand that. And if it come over that I was criticising, it certainly wasn't a criticism. Thank you.
It didn't come out over like you were criticising the officers. I think you're absolutely right. You were highlighting as well the kind of positive outturn that's coming from Gravesham. But I just wanted to say I agree with you, because I think it's very good to acknowledge the work of the officers, and I know how much effort it takes. And I know Tina behind the scenes is working with the leasing agents and that sort of thing for the St George's. So we'll move on from that agenda item to a social value update. Agenda item 7. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to talk very briefly, give an update around social value. Members may recall that we bought a paper here a while ago while we were developing our journey around social value, and really this is just showing some of that progress that's been made. So our approach to social value, as you'll probably recall and you'll be aware, under the Procurement Act, if we are procuring contracts with a value of over £100,000, then it's a requirement that social value is one of the assessment criteria within that. And the council clearly are following that, but we were keen to actually look at how else we could work with our partners and community organisations to really achieve the maximum benefits that we could. So we've gone beyond just looking at those large contracts, and what we do is we work very closely with our community organisations through the community involvement team to understand what some of the pressure points and the issues are, and where organisations perhaps are looking for additional support for their service users, for the community, and of course always having an eye on what social value can deliver with regards to real outputs. So within the paper, there's an infographic which demonstrates what we achieved during the last financial year. So clearly, in the not too distant future, we'll be upgrading this to reflect what we've achieved in this year. But I just thought it was worth bringing it here just to remind ourselves of the value of social value. And as you can see, volunteering in itself, there is a value to that. And it stacks up quite considerably when you look at the number of hours that people are spending supporting good causes and the equivalent value of that when an organisation releases their staff to undertake those volunteering activities. Community support is something that we push quite hard, because we know that being able to give small grants to community groups enables them to really expand the work that they're doing. And so you'll see that just over £11,000 was achieved last year in actual grant funding from different organisations to support a range of activities. So from free family events, and I'm sure you'll all appreciate that for families, particularly during the 6-week summer holidays, for example, to be able to collectively go out and join in free events is very much welcomed. But we've also had funding towards community planting, towards some food banks, and various other things that are listed in this infographic. And the one that's really interesting and kind of stacks up the significant monetary value, if you like, is around skills and employment. And I think this is where we're very keen to ensure that through those large contracts, particularly around things perhaps like construction, that we're really maximising opportunities for local skills development, for apprenticeships, and for opportunities for particularly young people to be exposed to understanding, work opportunities in the future. And as you can see, that collectively, that together, we estimate is around £1.5 million. What I would say is that, we acknowledge that we don't collect all of the social value that's being delivered across the borough. This is a journey for us. We've developed that journey, but it will continue to be a developing journey. And we're working very closely with businesses to try and capture that information so that we can really develop this understanding that we've got. But that's all I really wanted to do, Chair, was just share this as an update.
Thanks, Anita. Any questions? Yes.
Chair, thank you, Chair. I just think that's very positive, and it's a really good aspect, and it's good that we're trying to get our youngsters involved in work and everything else. So I thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Croxton.
Yes, I very much echo that. I mean, having been to a number of free events and for family and community recently, I think what we do is a tremendously good job, and it's probably in difficult circumstances and probably not always appreciated necessarily by the businesses themselves, although I think it does deliver footfall. I think at some point in future, when we come back to the skills and employment, which is a very significant amount of money, and I think very, very important, it would be nice to flesh that out and have some examples and talk about, who these apprentices are, because we are, after all, probably the biggest employer or one of the biggest employers in the borough. And I think whatever help and support we do provide is going to provide young people or middle-aged people, whatever people, with an opportunity to further strengthen themselves in the long term. So I wonder if at some point when we come back to this, it might be fleshed out a little more so we can see exactly what we're doing, what we're achieving, and go out and sell ourselves and work with the fine officers we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll all agree on that. I think that's a great thing that we should do in future. I know that for Curo, who are building the charter, there are a couple of apprenticeships I've had the pleasure of speaking with down there. There's a couple of apprentices. And I know that they're getting great skills and learning those things going forward, which is so important. And upskilling of 27 workers, I think, it is really, really good. So it's something to be applauded. But it's also, as you both pointed out, the kind of and the report highlights the free family events again, and this is in addition to what the council's putting on from the commercial portfolio. We've been able to generate the revenue. This is what, contract people that we've got contracts with are providing and supporting those events. And I thank you to those organisations and partners out there that are supporting these events, because it really makes a difference to the residents in our community. Any other questions on this particular part? Councillor Croxton?
Can I just come back, because I think you put your finger on something that's very important. There are criticisms of councils and the work in terms of social value by people who, I believe, know the price of everything and value of nothing. And I think the fact that we still do it at a time where resources are becoming ever stretched is very much, I think, to the credit of the officers and the way perhaps we see the borough. Thank you.
Yes, I'd absolutely agree with that. Thank you very much. Any questions on this part? No? Okay. Right. Well, I'm agenda item 8 we're at, and I'm not aware of any other business by reason of special circumstance. So we're going to move to the, in accordance with Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act, the meeting will now become private in order for confidential information to be considered. Therefore, I will be formally closing the meeting to the public and press. So I have to ask you all to leave, please. Sorry. And as no further items will be discussed except for the confidential items listed on the agenda. Thank you to the public for joining us this meeting. The public part of this meeting has been recorded and will be available to view via YouTube. I now formally close the meeting to members of the public. Thank you.